Hello, everyone. This is Tony Malz. We're here with another podcast for Sizigi. I'm so excited for our next guest. It's like a leprechaun. We have a cool CFO, Mr. Jim Krupiarz. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tony. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for making the time. You want to give a quick introduction of yourself to our audience?
Sure. I'm currently a CFO for hire. I am based up in Carlsbad. Been in the CFO world, mainly the startup CFO world for the past 15, 20 years. I'm a CPA. I've been in San Diego since 1987, moved out here from Michigan. I got my MBA from the University of Michigan, was recruited by a company in Sorrento Valley, and thought, why not? It's my chance to move to California.
Yeah, so, smart move.
Yes, it is. Yeah, so I've been here since.
Well, great. I'm lucky. I've been here my whole life. Michigan, used to watch when I was a kid with the Fab Five. I know it's a little bit after your time, but that was some great basketball. And now with Fisher coming to San Diego State.
Yeah, that's great. I just went to the basketball game on this past Saturday.
Is that why they lost?
It is. It absolutely is, yes. I was so excited. I took my daughter. It was just going to be the perfect day, and it was a great day. But
okay, no more games.
Yeah, no. That was the one. I bought the ticket like a month earlier and planned ahead. And
yeah, it's going to be an exciting March here.
Yes.
So, much like me, most of our audience come from big corporations, right? With hundreds, even thousands of people. They might even be public. You come from startup land for a couple decades now, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what would be interesting is how that dynamic is different. I'm getting a taste right now. The first thing that I'm looking to do is fundraising, right?
Right.
You want to talk about some of your fundraising efforts, whether it could be a convertible note or potentially any kind of big series rounds?
Yeah, I've been in two positions where we did a lot of fundraising. The first one was name of the company is Voxox. They're in existence still. They're not going anywhere. And I went on board there in late 2009. And I was there until mid-2017. And we did serial angel rounds, angel and sort of high net wealth individual rounds. We did about 6 or 7 of those because we just had a big pool of those potential investors. We had a finder who would go out and go to different shows, make contacts, and find these individuals who were willing to invest in the company. So it was a very alternative, unorthodox way of funding the company. We would bring in, during my time there, we brought in, I think, about $60 to $70 million.
Wow.
The problem was it sort of came in dribs and drabs, if that's possible for $60 million, but it didn't necessarily match our cash flow needs, in a given maybe month or quarter. And so there was always kind of it was tough to match up the cash flow needs with the investment money that was coming in, so to make sure they matched or they came in on time. I wouldn't recommend it. Much better to get big tranches, and to really just have a more planned out funding strategy. It really was sort of as needed, and we didn't want to get VC investors, and so we didn't. We did get a couple larger institutional investors that gave us rounds of $5, $6, maybe $10 million at any one time, which was great. But overall, it was just the ongoing slog of these $100,000, $200,000, $50,000 investments coming in one at a time, and it was difficult to manage a business that way.
Yeah, that's tough. And this was at what time? When there probably wasn't as much capital around?
It was right after the Great Recession.
Yeah.
So that's really where it came out of. We probably could have broken out of it, but we ended up getting too old as a startup. We were around for 5 or 6 years. We weren't showing any growth. It was really hard to show that we were doing, kind of showing the growth that a VC might want to see. And the founders didn't want VCs. They didn't want to give up any of their ownership. So
right.
It made it difficult. The other one, my most recent role was with Bitmo up in Carlsbad. I was there for about a year, and it was a little bit more of a traditional. It was a pre-revenue company, so we had gotten some early investors. It was the seed. It was a seed round that they had closed the end of 2018. And that got us through a big chunk of 2019. Then we were facing a need for another round at that point. That's when I left, because I could see that I wasn't really needed, and my salary wasn't really needed, and there's gonna be some effort required to get the company to where it needs to be. They're still there. In fact, I did some work for them last couple weeks, closing out 2019 for them. So
great.
Either way, though, the funding is always on your mind.
Yeah.
Especially as a finance guy.
Yeah.
You're constantly thinking about funding and presenting the forecasts and the financials.
That's why I don't have any
to
hair.
get funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's great. Let's, one of the big things is business partnerships, right? And, at your level, working with executives and board of directors, how do you go about kind of talking about numbers, right? Because numbers can be pretty boring. Is there a lot of storytelling or influencing to an outcome?
It's really influencing to an outcome, because when we go into a meeting, we know what we want them to come out believing. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but we definitely present the numbers in a way to guide them down the path to the decision that we want them to make. And a lot of times that decision is to invest more money. So it's a matter of, before the meeting, getting to know the people that you're going to be talking to, especially the board members who you may not have a lot of opportunity to talk to. I'd like to talk with them separately, outside the loop of the CEO or anybody else, during the months leading up to a board meeting. And just so they get to know me, know my style, understand my background and experience, because trust is a lot of the concern that they may have, especially for somebody new who's coming on. And so you have to build that trust that they'll believe what you're telling them. So, but it is a matter really of what am I thinking of? Kind of getting on the tailcoat of the CEO, because he's going to tell the story of where the company's going, what the strategy is, where we want to be, and I step in and I give the number side of it, and this is how we're going to get there, and this is the funding that we need for that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's smart to build strong relationships one-on-one with the board and investors and with the executive team. How about some of the metrics, right? So, obviously revenue and profit are easy, but sometimes they're not even revenue or profit. How do you, from a finance perspective, how do you bring your own insight or recommendations to company KPIs?
Yeah, it depends on what business you're in, obviously, and what your product is. I have a couple examples here of KPIs. Bitmo, we were a electronic gift card company, and so it was important for us to build our user base, and then those users we would attempt to convert to customers. A customer was somebody who would buy the actual gift cards from us. Users, we might just give them freebies, but they're not actually paid. They're not paid users, so they're not really customers. So user acquisition costs is always important. I think that's important in just about any business. And then conversion rates from unpaid users to paid users is very important. And then the revenue per user, per paid user, average revenue per paid user. So we know, how much they're buying and how much more we need to sell them. And then again, applying that against the user acquisition cost to make sure that we're actually making money off of these customers.
Right. Yeah, I think, a lot of times people just think, hey, what's total revenue? There's a lot of stuff underneath the water that can really move it. And How about, one of the things that always seems tough is execution. And as far as execution, it means aligning the organization to these metrics, right? Hey, do we have the company aligned moving free users to paid users? Do we have the company aligned on how to optimize our marketing spend or lower our CAC or customer acquisition cost? At big companies, this becomes really challenging, right?
Mm-hmm.
How about at smaller companies? Is it still as challenging, or is it pretty easy to align the company?
Well, you have to get everybody thinking along, obviously along the same lines. At Bitmo, we had 7 key KPIs. That's a double because it's a key performance indicator. So anyway,
I like it.
7 top KPIs that were always on display. And that was what we used. And each of them had, if a certain department were doing what we wanted them to do, that KPI would then go in the positive direction or the direction that we wanted. So that's how we kept the focus, and that's how we kept people, moving the ship forward to, improve those KPIs. So anyway, that's one way of doing it, and that's the way we're doing it at Bitmo.
Yeah, no, I think that's great where you surround everyone by the same KPIs. Sometimes a bigger organization, a KPI could be one thing, and then their comp or quota might be something else, right? So you get this tug of war here on that mismatch, and it's really not the individual's fault, right? It's just maybe the company hasn't set it up accurately to incent.
Yeah, and we weren't big enough, to have, and there may have been some subtle, conflicts like that, but it wasn't big enough that there was anything significant. And we were all in the same room. We all were looking at the same screen, and everybody knew what the KPIs meant. And even if one wasn't necessarily something that you were part of, or that, you were sort of obligated to make look better, you still wanted it to. So there was, support, pressure, whatever it might be, between departments to get their act together to, achieve those goals. I mean, it could also make things go crazy, kind of make things go south. One of the things at Bitmo was user acquisition, and, we could just spend a lot of money and acquire users through social media advertising. And we started doing that, and the numbers went way up. But then our cost of our user acquisition cost also went way up. So it didn't work out quite well.
Yeah, and I don't really know the industry that well, but it's probably potentially hard to measure lifetime value, obviously, with any startup. But it sounds like maybe even seasonal, right? With gift cards, maybe.
Yeah, it was hard because we didn't really know how long.
Yeah.
They might just make one purchase. They might love it and make purchases, the rest of their lives. And it is very seasonal too. So it's not like, a phone system or something that they're going to use over a period of time. There's like a set period that you can be pretty sure that customer is going to be a customer of yours, and you can determine what the lifetime value is.
Right. So, another thing is financial forecasting. There's a few things. I'll just give you my experience, right? So kind of at these big companies, usually we would do a current quarter forecast maybe once a week. We would do a rolling 4-quarter forecast maybe once a month. We would do the annual plan, which was this huge effort. And really, the first day into the plan, you already have a different strategy and numbers than what the plan is. And then maybe a 3 to 5 year forecast maybe twice a year. How does it work in startup? I know the current quarter, right, is extremely important.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've worked in those environments where you're doing in the big environments where you're doing the 3 to 5 year plan, and it takes a month, 3 or 4 month process to get everything done by the end of the year to have everything ready for the next year. In my experience and what I felt was most effective, the first thing you're always wanting to know is cash, and how much cash is there, how long is the cash going to last. So what I do is, before even looking at anything long-term, put together a short-term cash flow, 13-week cash flow forecast that will tell us where will we be in 13 weeks? Will we need more funding in 13 weeks? And 13 weeks is a quarter, basically. So I ended up putting one together. It was one of my crowning achievements, I must say, in my finance career. The weekly cash forecast. Nobody else really, seemed to, get as crazy over it as I did, but I loved it.
Well, we have one too.
Because it was so accurate.
I love it.
It was just amazingly accurate. I just hit it really well. And it would tell me every week what the cash was going to be. And I could really trust it, as far out as I had it. So that actually, I ended up extending that out for a year after a while. First, it was just, the 13 weeks. In terms of more strategic forecasting, I really put together a 12-month forecast right off the bat, and then break that down into quarters, and then each quarter becomes the one that we're going to be looking at. And it's a living document, literally. I mean, I work on it every day because new information will come in every day. I'll hear something, that will require some kind of tweak. I'll go into a meeting and somebody, the developers will say something is going to be pushed back. Some product or some, sprint isn't going to come or be done on time. So I'm constantly working on that forecast and keeping it in front of me. It's my main document.
Yeah, I love real-time forecasts. Even at big companies, we had systems, and it's like, wow, you heard something? Let's go put it in the system, even though we're not going to run a report, because you might not remember in a week when we actually have to run the report to make that change, right?
Yeah.
So,
100%. And it's my job to be able to say this is where we are going to be in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and so it has to be the best information.
Yeah, and it's fun to kind of sit back and see what dials you can turn up or turn down, right?
Yeah, I think it's fun. I mean, I really do like making those forecasts.
Well, that's what makes us cool. I mean,
it is.
It is. Finance people can be good. And speaking of what I think is cool, or maybe the next generation of finance, what I really like is going out and meeting with customers or vendors, see how they perceive your business value, see how you influence to that outcome we talked about, how you get a contract signed. The actual value finance can bring to a selling motion is huge and fun. How about your experience in that?
I've had some. It's hard to do. It's hard to get that done. A lot of the guys that are people that I've worked for don't like me even leaving the office, for whatever reason that might be. I did fortunately work at one company not too long ago, Sansei, that was between my Voxox and Bitmo experience. I was there for about a year. But not a lot went well there, but I was able to work with customers. I negotiated deals. I got to know the customers, and I got to know the product that way because I had to understand how it was priced, understand how customers were using it, and it was really helpful for me. And I know the customers really liked it, having the CFO involved in the negotiations, because the salesperson is one thing, the CEO is one person, but the CFO has to be kind of is the trustworthy one. So
yeah, and a lot of times you might have to work with the customer on their business case, right, or ROI. So you bring that to the table.
Yeah,
and like you said, we're not really selling it. We're more or less business partnering, building that trusted relationship.
Yeah, I wasn't selling it. Yeah. I was giving them the information they, based on what they gave me, to see what we could do for them that would fit into their plan. And
then they sign the deal, and maybe 3 or 6 months later they call you up because there could be maybe they want to discuss something. It's just nice to have that relationship, and I think it helps you become a better business partner if you actually understand what's going out in the field.
And it's a lot of times it was a peer-to-peer relationship with the other company, their CFO or chief operating officer or somebody like that. So I find that satisfying and useful.
Yeah. So let's talk about your current gig. At FICO, one of the things I tried to do for the finance department is kind of use a slogan. Let's call it, we're delivering financial success as a service. And, I like how you're using CFO as a service, right? Kind of what you're delivering. So yeah, let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, I figured I went out on my own. I left Bitmo because I just got tired of the startup treadmill, and a position at a startup for a CFO doesn't have a lot of, it's not a long-term position. It never is going to be. Even if it's going good, it's just not going to be. Somebody's going to want some kind of, new blood, and if something goes wrong, it's, even if it's the CEO's fault, which, we always think it is as a CFO, they're gonna point to the CFO, because the CEO is much too tied into everything, and so that's, I think, part of it too. But
it's kind of like an offensive lineman. Is that what you're saying? You only get noticed if there's a flag.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So if something needs to be changed, it'll be the CFO. My last job, I didn't want that to happen, so I left on my own, and went out on my own, and I'm starting and have set up my own CFO for hire firm, and I'm still sort of designing the sort of the talk around it and the idea around it. But CFO as a service was one of them, because I want to use that concept where they'll sign me up, for X amount of hours a month, and use me for that time for whatever they need, and I can get a contract from them. So I'll have a 12-month contract with somebody for CFO services, and we don't know really what it's going to be that I'll be doing, which is a typical CFO job, and I can then plan out my own revenue and project my own revenue and
capacity planning, recurring revenue.
Exactly.
It's a great business
Determine
model.
what my own recurring revenue is going to be, what my average revenue per customer is going to be. So I've sort of stolen the software as a service model, and I'm trying to apply it to CFO as a service. It seems to make sense to me.
And is this just like San Diego, or are you looking to do this virtually?
Right now it's San Diego. I could do it virtually. Well, and it's not just San Diego. Actually, I have friends I actually do, who live in different parts of the country. I'm working with somebody in Chicago who has a B&B, and there's no specific industry I'm working with. I've worked in tech for the past 10 years, 12 years, but I can't be picky. But I'm also not, but I also am picky, but I'm taking what I think are good clients that have interesting businesses. So I'm working with a B&B in Chicago. I have a guy who has a manufacturing business in Virginia, so I'm working with him. And the others are actually mainly in the Carlsbad area. I have a realty brokerage. They have about 120 realtors that work for them, and very complex, a lot of transactions going on there. I've sold myself to them at a certain level of work per month that is being highly taken advantage of. So, I have to make sure I price myself properly with, for the amount of work that I'm going to be doing. But anyway, I kind of forgot the question, but
just to talk about it, and maybe let's talk about what's ahead for 2020 for this business, and maybe what do you think over the next couple years where it could be?
Well, I want to. Over the next couple of years, I would like to, be able to have some people working for me, because I can't do all the work. That's really the trouble I'm having already. I started this in early November, and I don't know how I'm going to fill my obligations. One thing I'm doing a little bit differently outside of the CFO work is that I'm a CPA, and I'm working with 2 firms to do their overload work for busy season. So I was at one today here downtown, and then I have another one that I work with, and they're in Mission Valley. I'm doing all of they're a financial planning firm, and I'm doing all of their business and individual tax returns for their clients, and that's about 120 tax returns I'm going to be doing for them that I have to get done in the next 2 months. And I'm like, how the hell am I going to do this?
I was wondering what you were filling out while we were doing this podcast.
Yeah. Hey, what's the standard deduction for a single one? So I'll just be doing taxes in my sleep. But that's not really the business model. That's me coming out of corporate work and needing to make money right away, and it's been great. It really has been. So I'm not complaining. I have that sort of extra little angle that I can use to, fill in the empty spots. But I would like to have, I sort of have a schedule or a plan of, different types of clients, different amounts of work per month, the fees that I would charge them, and the number of them that I need to achieve the revenue that I want to achieve. And I am filling those in as I go. And so,
yeah, I admire it. I know a bunch of outsourced accounting firms. I don't really know of many outsourced CFO where you can call up a CFO and use that person's hours every month. So I think it's a pretty great.
Yeah, it can be a single project. It can be an ongoing
Yeah.
basis. I went back to Bitmo a couple weeks ago to close out 2019 for them. So that was a one-time thing, and maybe on a quarterly basis I'll be doing that.
Yeah. So one of the things about Sizigi, right, is this whole professional branding. I didn't really understand what that was until recently after I left my employer, right? Someone with your credentials, right? A CFO now, maybe 20 years, 15, 20 years at a bunch of startup companies. What do you think of professional branding?
I think it's a great idea because everybody has to differentiate themselves. There's all sorts of CFOs, CPAs out there like me. A lot of them are younger than me now, and so which isn't a bad thing, It's not their fault; they're not experienced. But I just think there's a way to distinguish yourself, and using personal branding. I mean, it's something that I've heard of for a long time. I've read books on it, and it's been around a long time. I've never seen it really implemented very well or at all for a professional, like somebody who's in my profession, other than, I guess, setting up a company where they do CFO work or something like that, and that they name their company that. But I think the personal branding, and me as the Cool CFO, that's my personal brand. It's also the name of my little company. I'm a CPA, so I can't really call there's limits on what I can call myself as a CPA in promoting my business and my services, but it's sort of a side thing, just kind of I don't know what you'd call it, but it is a brand. It is a brand, and it's what I call myself, and my clients like it. It's the sort of thing where they'll say like, "Hey, we got the Cool CFO here to, tell us about blah 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 blah," or I'm working with the Cool CFO. He'll take care of that for you. Just give him a call, and so they like saying that, and it gives them something more than Jim. You got Jim here,
Yeah. Yeah. I think
and there's stuff that goes, I hope there's an image that goes out with that term, So
it's a great name.
Yeah. So I got professional headshots done. I came up with that name. I did the logo myself. It needs work, but I have a little website that I put together, but I'm just trying to, even within my own thinking, approach things in that way.
Yeah, I think we're taught when we're young is, hey, it's kind of tough. Go get your job, build experience, and then all of a sudden your resume looks better and you can get a job pretty easily. And what people don't tell you is even after 20 years of myself or around that many years for yourself is when you're trying to actually go get your next job, it's hard. I mean, you're calling up kind of other executives in our area.
Right.
You're starting from scratch because you really don't have a brand. And I think right now you're doing some great things where you created your own company, created this whole Cool CFO brand, logo, and now you have an identity outside of your employer.
Right. Yeah, because I worked for 7 or 8 years at Voxox, and I was the Voxox CFO. That was my Twitter handle. And then it's like, well, once I left Voxox, I'm not that anymore. What am I? I'm nothing, And so, well, I'm not nothing, but I'm not the Voxox CFO. So that's when it really hit me at first. I think it's important. A lot of old time, stuffy professional people probably don't like it, but I think that it's okay to maintain a brand while you're working at another company. And as long as it doesn't conflict with what they want and with your job, I think it's okay to, create that and call yourself that.
Yeah.
And keep working on it because, I mean, you can tell the story about the person who changed their picture on LinkedIn, I mean, nobody wants to, it's not like you're working on your resume looking for your next job. You're just taking care of yourself and protecting yourself because the world is different than it used to be. And that something is going to change in the next few years, and you have to be ready for that change to happen. And I think having a brand and an image for yourself.
Yeah, I think what we know is 1 out of 200 people on LinkedIn post once a week, right? There's something wrong. And, what we're trying to do is really improve people's professional brand,
Mm-hmm.
and have it show, because that's really how we are going to grow all together, right? If we can actually
Right.
learn from each other. If we're only learning from one out of every 200 people, it's not going to happen, right? So I think professional branding, confidence is just huge, and we're going to see it really change this decade.
Yeah. I think my impression of LinkedIn is, in a lot of ways, it's a mutual admiration society. You can't. It's hard to really stand out, I think, and everything anybody posts, everybody loves. I think that what you're offering, what Sizigi has to offer, I think is great. It's super important, and I think it's going to be super valuable, because it's a place where people can go to see the type of person they're looking for, and hear everything about them and see everything about them, and that's managed by the members, the individual people.
Yeah, and you're going to be at our user group tonight, and we're going to give you free food and beverages, so thank you for that plug.
Yeah, definitely.
For our last question, I think, part of life, right, is you go through it and then you look back and reflect. And, now that, let's call it in our better second half of our career, what would be the one piece of advice you would tell yourself when you first got out of college professionally?
I would say, what I did, I took a very professional position. I went directly into public accounting. I would say take risks, but take calculated risks, because I did take a couple risks that were completely not calculated, a few years into my career after I moved to San Diego, actually. And it really did set me back. I don't regret what I did, but I didn't really go in fully aware of what I was doing. And but I definitely say, if you want to do it, do it. Just make sure that you have some thought behind what you're going to do. My career has been very unconventional. I've worked in, the corporate world. I worked at a big 8 CPA firm. I worked on my own at my own practice, and then I went to work for one of my clients, and then I got into the startup world, and now I'm back on my own again. And it's not something that I ever would have planned out, but every step along that way is consistent with something that I wanted to do and who I am. But I would say the stumbles I made were done because I hadn't really thought it through. I did it more out of emotion than actually, is this going to be the right decision for me career-wise? And I still may have done it, but I would have handled it and managed it differently. So
yeah, that's great advice. It's a common theme we hear is people saying, hey, take a calculated risk, right? Instead of maybe doing this role for 5 years, hoping to grow with the company,
right,
and bypassing other opportunities because you want your resume to look a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
you can make your resume look however you want,
mm-hmm,
with whatever you've done. And some people like to stay in the same place the whole time. Some people are not risk takers. That's fine too.
Yep.
But that's also a calculated decision. So just make sure that they are calculated decisions, or reasonably calculated. Have some basis for it other than, hey, I'm going to just do that, and hope it all goes well. I did that, and needless to say, it didn't go well. So,
yeah, let's wrap this up here. If anybody wants to contact you, what's the best way?
My phone number, 760-991-4446, or at jim@coolcfo.com.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Congratulations to all your success. We'll see you tonight at our user group.
Great. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.